By now you've likely heard Donald Trump make this public confession on air.
Whoever heard you get indicted for interfering with a presidential election where you have every right to do it? You get indicted and your poll numbers go up. When people get indicted, your poll numbers go down.
Now, what Trump was trying to do is a tactic that he employs early and often. He's under the impression that if you admit to your criminal behavior out in public, in broad daylight, then it won't seem as corrupt. After all, most of us understand that normal people don't generally confess to criminal activity on national TV, and so Trump is using that concept to try and manipulate us. Surprise, surprise. But here's the problem. Donald Trump didn't take into account two things. The first is that Jack Smith and his prosecutorial team are watching. And when Donald Trump makes public statements like this one, they are admissible in court, meaning that while Trump might try to bolster his case in the court of public opinion, he is simultaneously hurting his case in the only court that actually matters, the D.C. courtroom, where this case is still awaiting trial at the hands of Judge Chutkan. But the second is arguably even more damaging. The only person who can actually defend Trump in court is Trump himself, meaning he would actually have to do something that he and his lawyers clearly have no intention of doing, which is to have Trump take the stand in his own defense. And if he testifies during trial, that means he gets cross-examined, which on the Richter scale of bad decisions for the Trump legal team would be somewhere between a 9.5 and an 11. And that's a point, by the way, that MSNBC legal analyst Glenn Kirshner made clear.
The only person who will have a right to take the stand and explain what he meant when he told an interviewer he interfered in an election is Donald Trump. And then he gets cross-examined back into the Stone Age by Jack Smith's prosecutors. Donald Trump cannot take the stand in his own defense. So that literally gives Jack Smith this buffet of incriminating statements that Donald Trump has been saying for years now to present to a jury and convict him.
In fact, it would get even worse, because let's remember, even if Trump took the stand, he would be forced to defend the indefensible. He's got no leg to stand on in terms of any of the events leading up to and on January 6th, and voting rights attorney Mark Elias made that point abundantly clear. In terms of Donald Trump being able to, in the courtroom, defend himself from this, is it true that the only way he could actually be able to defend against the charges that he did indeed confess to this crime would be if he himself took the stand and nobody else could speak on his behalf?
I mean, he could try to defend it if he took the stand, but what the hell would he say if he took the stand? Yeah. I mean, he said what he said. He said what he said at the National Mall on January 6th. He said what he said in the lead up to the violent insurrection on January 6th. He said what he said on that phone call with Brad Raffensperger, where he asked the Secretary of State to find votes that don't exist. And he has said what he said in various tapes, including this most recent one. I mean, the guy is a walking crime.
So in effect, what Trump has done here is not only confess to criminal behavior on national TV in some weird, misguided effort to absolve himself among folks who blindly believe every word that falls out of his face and that believe his lies anyway, he's also given ammo to Jack Smith to further prove Trump's criminal behavior in court. And he's made it so that the only way Trump could defend himself from his own confession is if he himself takes the stand, which of course would turn into a prosecutorial bloodbath in the event that Donald Trump is forced to tell the truth under the threat of perjury. All in all, quite the characteristic legal misstep from someone thoroughly steeped in legal missteps. But what it should tell the rest of us who aren't prosecutors is clear. Donald Trump has zero remorse for the actions that he committed on January 6th. He is out there defending his blatant criminality. This is someone for whom election interference isn't some unfortunate byproduct, it is the whole strategy. If he doesn't regret doing it once, an action for which he was literally indicted, then that should give some insight into how he feels about doing it again. For Donald Trump, election subversion isn't a bug, it's a feature. And I'd be remiss if I didn't also point out this other recent confession of his.
I've done well with debates. I mean, I became president. Then the second time, I got millions more votes than I got the first time. So I was told if I got 63 million, which is what I got the first time, you would win. You can't not win. And I got millions of more votes than that and lost by a whisker.
Weird how all this time he's been claiming that he didn't lose, and yet now, suddenly, we've got another admission. It's almost like he knew he wasn't lying all along, huh? And you don't need to take it from me. Listen to what Matthew Dowd, who was the chief strategist for the Bush-Cheney 2004 campaign and an MSNBC senior political analyst, had to say.
So, Matthew, is it now whisker talk?
Or loser talk? I mean, he has not, I guess this is like an admission finally that he lost the election. I think that clip is so poignant in that, one, he basically now admits what everyone else knew, that he lost, but he talks about like winning millions of votes as if winning them in one election is somehow rolls over into another election, that's all you need is the same amount of votes. When the American population grows, more people get engaged, more people, you know, get active and register and vote in this election. So I find it fascinating that he thinks that. And the other thing I would like to remind folks of when they hear that clip is Donald Trump has never won the popular vote. He lost it in 2016, even with his quote unquote 63 million votes. And then he lost it again in 2020. So it's fascinating that he finally admits that he lost, but it certainly shows a complete lack of understanding of how elections work.
All of this underscores why it is so important to stay vigilant this election cycle. Trump has made false claims time and time again, and he's already broadcast that he'll employ the same underhand strategy yet again. That means that we have to turn out numbers that wholly and completely repudiate Trump and Trumpism. Is that a sad testament to the state of our democracy today? Absolutely. But is it necessary to relegate this anti-democratic brand of politics to the ash heap of history? Yes. So if you're tired of the chaos, the manufactured outrage, the lies, the obfuscations, the election denialism, this is our chance to defeat it once and for all. Trump is out there working to undermine our elections. Our job is to work to win them. Before you go, to see more content from MSNBC, make sure to subscribe to this channel by clicking the link right here on this screen. And you can also follow the link to see some exclusive content only on TikTok.